Hi everyone, this is Joe Massaro with Joe Massaro Ministries, and one of the hats I wear is founder of Yahweh Sisterhood Book Club. And I'm so honored tonight. We actually are supposed to have 4 authors, and one is having some technical difficulties, so hopefully she will be able to jump on with us during the interview. But we're so excited to have Amanda Barrett, Johnnie Alexander, and Lauralee Bliss. I almost forgot your last name, I'm so sorry. And Rita Gerlach is going to be with us as well, hopefully. But the book that we're going to be talking about tonight is, you can see it behind me, and I have to tell you, I just love this book for many, many reasons. It's 4 historical stories, and I almost said hysterical stories, by the way, when I was talking to someone about it. So it's not hysterical, it's historical, and Homefront Heroines, and it's with 4 authors, and it is just wonderful. And now, Johnnie, this is your 3rd time with me.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. And so I know one of the books we talked about was Where Treasure Hides.
Yes.
And I didn't have enough time to go back and look for the other one, but whatever it was, the title, if you remember it, that's great. I can't remember it, but it is on the website so people can find it. Wonderful, wonderful books.
The Mischief Thief, was it that one?
That's it right there.
The Mischief Thief.
Yes. And I will have to tell you that Where Treasure Hides still continues to be one of my favorite books.
Thank you.
So, and I'm excited because this is my first time with the 2 of you, and we are going to have so much fun. So this is actually from Barber Book Publishings, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so maybe you could tell us, before we get into the story, how this whole thing started, because I know there's a story behind the story.
But who wants to answer that one?
Anybody could jump in.
Well, I just know that Rita is kind of like the mother of this series. She basically put a call out and said, hey, we want to do a World War II novella collection. And so a bunch of us started coming on there and giving some ideas. And she actually divided into 2 different World War II storylines. And so this one was the Homefront heroine storyline. So, and then she developed a Facebook group for it. She found pictures, and she's very into the historical history and like that of our nation and what we went through. So we just kind of went on her coattails, you could say, and just said, hey, you know, let's get this together and let's write these great stories together. And so I was so excited to be a part of it. So, and with these great ladies too, it was humbling and it was wonderful too.
Well, I love history, so anything to do with history is just amazing for me. And certainly during the World War, the Second World War, is just fascinating to me. So I was going to actually start with Rita, but I'm not going to be able to do that. So we are going to go to, and I was doing this kind of in the order of the book, I believe. So Lauralee, let's talk about Only Forever. And maybe you could tell us about the titles of each person's book, where all that came from.
Well, we actually came up with the idea of having each of the novellas part of music and songs. I can't say I was involved in that. Actually, I had some of my ladies here come up with a title for me, you know, that would fit, because, you know, there's so many different, you know, titles and like that of music back in that era. So, so they kind of helped me with that, and it was a great fit because of, you know, where my book was going toward and like that. So I was very happy. So kind of wish Rita was on, because she was also a very important
Rita is just trying
force
to
with
get
that.
on, so let's just see what happens. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself, Lauralee, and where people can connect with you.
Sure. I've been writing, oh wow, it's been a long time now. So over 25 years, I've published author of over 30 books. And so both in fiction and also in nonfiction, because I happen to be an adventurer too. I've hiked the Appalachian Trail twice, and I've also done the Florida Trail. So I've written books on that as well. So, but my love, of course, is in my fiction writing, and I've done, as I've mentioned, probably about 28 of those books. So, and it's been fun, and love my writing and love doing contemporary and historical, though now I focus more on historical, and so it's been wonderful.
So I think if I remember correctly, you talk about, well, why don't you first tell us a little bit about the storyline without giving too much away, and then I have a question for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, mine takes place, of course, on the home front and actually in New York State. And I was really happy where I said it because actually most of my bloodline actually comes from that part of Western New York State. So in the Springfield area. So that's where my book takes place, is in Springville. And my grandmother actually grew up not too far from there. So that's where I set the book. And of course, I put it in a historical setting of the Victory Gardens, because of course back then there was getting to be a shortage of food. A lot of food was going to the men at the front and like that, and suddenly there was this need in the nation to have the Victory Gardens so that everybody was doing their part, you know. And so mine focuses on that and the Victory Garden Committee, and of which I have Marilyn and Art, which are dutifully trying to get the Victory Garden Committee going in their town. And here comes this gentleman that wants to try and help them with this, saying he's from the government, but is he really? So I'll leave it at that. But of course, Marilyn, who's my heroine, tends to be a little bit smitten by him. But again, sometimes love makes us blind, and we really need to take those blinders off so we can kind of see what's real and what's fiction.
So true. So what do you think was the joy out of writing this story? Was there joy out of writing this? Was there like this revelation of things that maybe you didn't know that was going on during the war?
Okay, I'm seeing Rita now.
Rita, can you hear us?
Mm-hmm.
Yay!
I finally figured it out.
Hey, that's great. It's okay.
I'm not all that great at this kind of stuff.
It's okay. You're on. So
How I figured it out, I just worked. I don't know.
So this is in New York State. So let me go back a little bit. This is New York State that you wrote it in. Was there a reason, and I'm sorry, I was trying to make sure Rita got on. Was there a reason why you did it in New York State? So if you said that, I apologize.
Yes, well, that's where all my relatives come from, and that's kind of where it's where my grandparents were, and that was an area that I frequented a lot. So just the idea of setting it there was wonderful. But I think we were also talking about a little bit more about the book itself, but as far as the Victory Garden and the kind of the takeaway, the big thing that I learned from writing that story is the idea of actually a whole town coming together, people coming together to help in a time of need. And I think especially as we're seeing our nation struggling through so many things right now, I think we just need to really just come together and work together in love to overcome the enemies that are hiding in the darkness out there. And which is actually amazing that we're actually talking about it now during this time period, with the virus and all kinds of other things happening in our nation, that this is a great takeaway, at least from the novella that I did write during this era of time that was very, very difficult also for our nation, World War II.
Yeah, there's very much parallels in there of what we're going through today. And I love the Victory Gardens, and I just think what a wonderful idea. I love to garden, so I'm up for it if anybody wants to join me. I'll get my new neighbors, because we moved in December, to say, hey, let's do a garden together. And you're right, there's a lot of things happening. I mean, the election was just 2 days ago, and there's still all the things that are going on with that. So I'll say amen and amen to everything that you just said. So anything else you want the readers to know about your book, about your story?
Well, just actually what you mentioned, the idea of a garden. I had so much joy during the virus when we were all cooped up at home, growing my garden, planting the seeds, watching it grow. And I'm telling you, I had such beautiful vegetables and flowers this year. And you know what? In my flower garden, I'm getting roses that never bloom this time of year for me, and azaleas. So, God is speaking through, these beauty things that we're seeing, even though there's so many difficult things. And so I really encourage you, even if you don't have a garden space, just get a little container and grow some nice herbs to sprinkle on your food or grow a little flower. And I think you're going to find a lot of healing and comfort in that and God's miracles in it.
Amen. I still have yellow roses that are growing in the front of my house. And I'm just enjoying them every day that I go in and out. So sometimes I just go out just to look at them. I'm not going anywhere, but I just go out to look at them. Thank you so much. Okay, Miss Rita. I was going to talk to you first, and I'm so glad that you're on because I definitely have something to talk to you about. But
Oh, okay.
but your novella story, historical story, is about it's called Moonlight Serenade.
Yeah.
And so before we get into it, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Well, I am 5 foot tall. I'm 100 and, oh, not going to say that. We'll leave it at the 100. I won't go any further. No, my name is Rita Gerlach. I was born in Washington, D.C. in 1955, a few years after the war. And my dad was a Navy veteran. And after the war, when he came back, he married my mother, and they bought a home in a community that was being built for the veterans coming back.
Mm-hmm.
And I was raised, it's right outside of Washington, D.C., maybe about 20 minutes out of Washington in Maryland, and with 5 brothers and sisters. And I married my high school sweetheart. We have 2 sons. They're both grown men. One is in the United States Navy, and I have part of the dedication in there with my son, for my son. So it means a lot to me. I mean, you know, just as far as myself personally, I don't like to, you know, talk about myself a lot, but you know, I love writing. I've written several novels. I've written for Barber. I've written for Abington Press. I've done some book series, novellas, and blank novels. And I own a cat. So I'm a cat lady.
You're a cat lady. So I was told that you were the kind of like the brains behind the start of this.
Oh, I don't know about brains. No, yeah, we kind of, I don't know, we just, it kind of, I can't really remember exactly how it evolved, but yeah, I put together for the proposal. So I wrote the proposal, and we actually began with, I think we had 9 authors at the start, and then Barbara wanted to bring those numbers down, so I wrote a proposal that was 2 parts. So we did the Homefront Heroines. The second part hasn't been picked up yet. I'm praying that they do pick it up because the stories that are in that proposal are really great. And that's, I think it was called Victory Brides. So there's that. But yeah, I had a lot of fun putting it together. I really did. With these wonderful ladies, they're all so talented. Yeah, so I feel very honored and blessed to be a part of it. So,
well, I have a feeling they think the same. You talked about a dedication at the beginning of your story, and you actually printed or copied the original letter that you had, and then there was the typed out version of it, and it was called V-mail. Maybe you could explain that.
Yes. I get all teary-eyed when I go through this. When my father was serving, he was on the USS Vulcan, and at the time, the men would get what was called V-mail. And my grandmother sent him a poem that she had written, I'm getting to it, and that poem was for the anniversary of his enlistment. And after my dad had passed away, my mother had, you know, gazillion papers. When she was going through stuff, she didn't know, I don't think she realized what she had, you know, and I found this in there. And if I had it handy, I would show you the original, but I don't have it sitting here. But it's this size. I'll show you how big. It's only about this big. That little piece of paper there is about the size of what the V-mail was. And it's a beautiful poem that that my grandmother wrote to him. And I was just so blown away because I shared it with the lady that was my editor for this book, and she sent it into Barbara and to the, you know, to the top people. And
yep.
They said, "Oh, we've got to put that in there." So there it is. Little did my grandmother and dad know that in August 29th of 1903, that I would have this piece of paper, her granddaughter, and that it would be put in a book.
Yeah, I just love it.
So
I'm actually hoping in a second that I can actually show it on the screen. So just, you keep talking and I'm going to.
Okay.
So
I would have got it out on my stuff.
Oh, no, it's fine.
You know, I have it.
Find it amazing because I had two uncles that were in the war, and they were both prisoners of war.
I had two that were prisoners of war as well.
Really?
Yeah. Yes.
And unfortunately, I don't think my parents or my family really kept a lot of the information. I wish that they had, but they did not. And so I'm working on our genealogy to try to get all that back. So
that's wonderful. Yeah. And you know, you can contact like the War Department, like for say one of your uncles was in the United States Army. Contact that, you can get their records, their military records.
That's a really good idea. Thank you for that. And for anybody else who is listening, to be able to do that. And I think I have found it. Okay. All right. So give me a second. I am going to, with a little help here, I need these glasses to be on to do that.
I tell you what, I admire you. You know how to do this.
I am going to share the screen. Let's just see if I can make this work.
All right.
Hold on. And I'm going to bring this up and I am going to open it up. And there it is. Can you guys see that?
I don't see it yet.
It says I'm sharing the screen and it's showing it.
I see it.
I see a green box.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
I saw blue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me just see if I could, maybe because it's Kindle.
There it is.
There we go.
Yep.
There you go. There it is.
That is the original letter. And I just think it was worth the effort for people to get to see it because I was just so overjoyed when I saw it.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're going to make me cry.
It really means a lot to me.
Oh, that's why I really wanted to show it. So I just think it's beautiful.
Thanks.
Nope, I didn't want to make you cry, but sometimes you just can't help it when we're talking about some of this stuff. You want to give us a little bit of a background of your story, and then I have a question for you.
Okay.
So we don't want to give the whole story away, but just give us a little bit.
Just a little gist. My heroine, Kate, she leaves her family farm in Pennsylvania. She heads down to Washington, D.C., and she gets a job at the Naval Yard. Both my parents worked at the Naval Yard, so they've been a big part of the inspiration for this story. And she ends up meeting Ronnie, who is the hero of the story. And I have I won't give the story away, I won't, but there's a lot of fun stuff in it. like he takes her to a USO dance.
Yes.
You
And
know,
the music and the
and
songs. Yes.
yeah, and all the great music of the era and the clothes. And she's while she's working at the Naval Yard, she is in a boarding house that, you know, a lot of people rented out rooms to the girls that were working in Washington because they had to fill in the shoes of all the men that left. And that's what she was doing. She works as a welder, a light welder. She does small things. And, you know, it's a love story and with a happy ending.
So let me ask you a question.
I mean,
You mentioned Schenectady in your book?
I believe, yes, I did, yes.
Okay, so here's my question, and I'll tell you first. I lived in Schenectady, New York, up until 6 years ago when I moved to Indiana. So
was that right? Wow.
How did Schenectady get in this book? I'm so curious.
Well, my father's cousin lived in Schenectady, and I guess that kind of like stuck in my mind. But this character in the story, Carol Ann, and she becomes Kate's buddy, you know, best friend in the story, and she's a total opposite of Kate, and she is from Schenectady, and she's very fashionable. She's more, you know, like the girls that like to dress like the Hollywood stars and stuff. She's all lipstick and silk hose. So that's where that came from.
Okay.
Carol Ann is from Schenectady.
Schenectady. I was surprised that people could say it.
No, Schenectady. It's a great name for.
It is.
I love settings in books. I think in stories that the towns and the places that people either lived or are living in it's all part of that spice in this story. And you know, putting something like Schenectady in there was really fun because, you know, Kate comes from a little farming place out in the country of, you know, Pennsylvania, and Carol Ann, you know, she's excuse me. That is Zoe.
Hi, Zoe.
That is my
not the first time.
That's my grand dog.
Oh, we've had cats go across the screen. It doesn't matter.
Well, she's a big German Shepherd, and she's trying to get my attention. Well, she's my grandbaby. She's my grandbaby.
She's sweet.
My son that's in the Navy is currently in training right now, and y'all could say a little prayer for him when you put your head on the pillow tonight.
We will.
And my daughter-in-law is staying with us while he is in training. He's training
for his service. Okay, thank you for his service.
Oh, yeah. He's trained for expeditionary forces. Yeah, it's yeah. So his wife is here, and the grandpuppy.
Nice.
And she loves me. I didn't know if she would, but she does.
Just so you know,
that's the other thing.
Schenectady means
I'm sorry.
trail.
What? I'm sorry.
Schenectady means end of the trail.
Oh, wow. It does? Mm-hmm. But that's neat.
It has to do with.
It must be an Indian name.
It is, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. Okay, so you talked about.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Yeah, you talked about blue and gold stars in windows. You want to just talk a little bit about that and what they meant?
Oh, yes. People started putting up these lovely little banners. You know, they're not a huge flag. They're just a banner. And you would put it in your window. And most of them were, you know, like red, white, and blue. The gold star was for a fallen son. The blue stars meant you had someone serving. Mm-hmm. So I had my front window, I have one of those, and it has a blue star, and it's going to stay a blue star. So yeah, amen. They still, to this day, they still they still have carried on that tradition in military families.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah. So if you see a blue star in a window, that's what that means, that
Serving.
someone in their family is a fallen hero. Or if it's a blue star, then someone is in the military.
Okay, anything else you want to share about your book or anything before we get to Johnnie Alexander?
Oh, I can't wait to hear Johnnie. No, just that, I really loved doing this series, and it was so fun. It really was fun. And it was so great working with all you girls. I mean, I felt so honored. Now I'm going to get all choked up, so you better go to Johnnie. Because I am.
And I think I'm going to need my Kleenex pretty soon.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. We so appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Johnnie, this is not your first time with us.
No. Glad to be back.
Yeah, so we have a history going here. This is your third time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so honored to have you back and to have you back with, these other three wonderful women. So let's talk about Blue Moon, and love that song, by the way.
I do too.
I was saying earlier, Rita, that I've been because I have a lot of big band music, and I've been putting it on when I started to read this book, and I have just been like going crazy. And my husband can dance extremely well to all of it.
Oh boy. Wow, you're lucky.
I am. Why don't you tell us some things about yourself?
Okay. Well, I think what's kind of known about me lately is that I move around a lot, and so people never know where I am. I had someone sending me an email today saying, "Where are you now?" And actually, I've lived in Oklahoma for about 3 years. I grew up in Ohio, lived most of my adult life in Florida, but then just because of circumstances, moved to Tennessee for a while, moved back to Florida for a while, then moved out here for a while. Another fun thing is that during the time I was in Tennessee, my sister and I had alpacas for a bit, and we raised alpacas. That was quite the adventure. I have 3 kids that are wonderful. My youngest just got married not too long ago, so it's really great to have a new member of the family, 5 grandkids, 2 dogs. And I think I have finally reached, not counting novellas and short stories, I have finally gotten into the double digits with novels. So I'm like on 10, 11, 12, somewhere right around in there now. So really excited about that. So
we have interviewed you for Where Treasure Hides,
yes,
which is still one of my favorites, as I said earlier, and The Mischief Thief.
Yes.
It's an incredible book as well. So I'm honored to have you back again. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the background of the story?
Oh, wow. Blue Moon. I love that song. And, when we decided to do song titles, I was just listening to different songs, trying to figure out, what my story was going to be about, doing that little story blurb that we all have to do. And it seems like every time I'd come up with a song, someone else said they were going to do it, but I finally found Blue Moon, and no one else was using it. And I listened to the part with Billie Holiday, her version of it, and looked up to see what exactly is a blue moon. Well, it really is just the second full moon in 1 month. And we, of course, we're also doing women on the home front. So I was, okay, I wanted to do something a little different. I don't know how I found it, but I came up with a website of these women who are called WOOPs officers, WOOPs.
Yeah. And
they are women of public safety. They're not in the military, but they were part of the Tennessee Valley Authority group, because what was happening was they built these dams. They were near Knoxville. There was aluminum plants and all these things that needed to be guarded because they were fearful of sabotage as they were in the war. And they would hire men, but then the men would get called up to go to service. So finally they started hiring women, and they called them WOOPs officers. They were one of the only groups of women auxiliary, I guess you would say, that were actually carried guns. They worked with dogs, which was intriguing to me, and learned judo and different things. So I thought, okay, my character's going, she's going to be a WOOPs officer. And then I remembered where I had read about this Atomic City, which Oak Ridge, Tennessee. It's known as the Atomic City, the Secret City, the reservation. And that is where they built the bomb that was dropped over Japan, the 2 bombs. But it was so secret, and a lot of people knew something was going on there, but even the people that worked there, thousands and thousands of people, they did their job, but they did not know what was going on. So I did a lot of fun research. My character is a WOOPs officer. She is mourning her boyfriend. They were going to get married. Pearl Harbor happened. He goes off to war. They write for a while, and then he stops writing, and she doesn't know why. So she is out on a blue moon night, because that was kind of their thing, with her dog Liberty, and she sees something, a sound in the woods. It's dark night. The dog goes after it, after the person shoots the dog. So it starts out really sad. And come to find out, it's the guy that she's in love with, that she hasn't heard from all these times, all this long time. But he's not a saboteur. He's actually testing the dam's security system. But she's, of course, very mad at him, but she also is able to do a judo move and knock him down. So anyway, they just go on this mission then to infiltrate the secret city, because there's something going on there. They're worried about sabotage there, and get caught up in events that are happening there. And of course, it's a romance. So,
Yes. So there's like intrigue, spy work going on.
I love spies. I love World War II spies. So, yeah.
And you also talked about the U.S. Army CIC, which is the Counterintelligence Corps.
Yeah, I just looked that up today as I was reading this story. It's, yes, counterintelligence or something like that. Yes. Yeah.
And so everybody's talking about music in your story. So like you had Boogie Woogie, Bugle Boy, Don't Sit Under the Apple Tree. I'm like, okay, I could just keep going on and on with all these songs. Anything else you want to mention about your story?
Yeah, a couple things. It was so fun doing the research. I actually got to make a trip over to, I read quite a bit about Oak Ridge and all of that history. Got to actually go over there. There's a community center there that was built in 1945 towards the end of the war, but I kind of mentioned it in the book. I sort of moved its date a little bit earlier, so it was already there. And it's now a little museum, and the people that were there running it talked to me, took me all around, just told me all kinds of stories. I listened to a lot of oral history, which was fascinating. The Manhattan Project Voices, I think is what it's called. And it was just so interesting to see these people talk about when they would go into this community, which was kind of like more than one community. They tried to keep them very contained, so you could only go through certain gates, you could only go through certain places, and the security was very tight, but they were very secretive. You never asked anyone else what their job was, and you never talked about these things.
Right. To no one.
It was amazing. The young women that were working there with these machines and the uranium, and they didn't know what they were doing, but they just had to keep these machines going a certain way. And then the kind of sad thing was the WOOPs officers, because I did early on find this website, knew that was going to be my story. But as I tried to find more information about them, there was nothing. Even people in Oak Ridge and at the museum, and I went to a couple other museums, they didn't even know what I was talking about. And it's like the history of those women has been kind of lost, which I find is a very sad thing.
Right. I just love the research. I just think it's fascinating what all of you have done.
It was a lot of fun. It was very interesting.
That's wonderful. So, Amanda, we're up to you now, Amanda Barrett. And your story is Dream. I was going to sing a Dream a Little Dream, but I'm not going to. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I am the author of 15 historical novels and novellas, Dream a Little Dream is not my only World War II set novel. I also have a couple other novels set during World War II. My Dearest Dietrich, a novel of Dietrich Bonhoeffer's Lost Love, which tells the true story of Dietrich Bonhoeffer and his fiancée Maria von Wedemeyer. And then my other novel, The White Rose Resist, tells the true story of Hans and Sophie Scholl, who were German college students who resisted the Nazis during World War II. And I live in Michigan with my family in northern Michigan and love writing.
Well, there you go. You were frozen for a minute or two, but it looks like you're back now. So you're not too far from me, I think. I'm in Fort Wayne, Indiana, so you're up above me somewhere. So, and I want to remember at the end, just so that I say it now, I want to make sure we let everybody know how they can connect with each of you. Okay. So the background to your story, Amanda.
So my story, and my characters are Cliff, Mary, and Cliff was inspired by a couple of things that I love very much. And the one is old Hollywood movie actors like Clark Gable, Cary Grant, and Jimmy Stewart.
Oh, yeah.
So I wanted to create a hero along those lines, but who, like, many of those men decided not just to sit on the sidelines during the war, but to actively serve. And I decided to make him actively serve as a pilot because I grew up watching shows like Blah Blah Black Sheep with my dad, and so kind of grew up with that whole atmosphere, and so wanted to kind of explore that, and so that was a lot of fun. And then Rosemary was born out of my deep admiration for the women who served as nurses, and I think that those women were often underappreciated in so many ways. History almost maybe did not cover them a ton, and so I really enjoyed researching her story and kind of blending the two together as they met. And this couple, very unlikely couple, this nurse falls in love with an army man who was a former very famous Hollywood actor.
Yeah, and they meet at a very famous drugstore.
Yes, Schwab's drugstore. That was so fun to include. I loved researching the old Hollywood. I mean, that is just very fascinating, and I love really putting their first meeting at that famous location.
Now, if I remember correctly, is that where Lana Turner was when she got noticed to become an actress? I'm not sure if it was Lana Turner, but I know it was one of them. I think it was her.
I don't believe, I think that that's something that people say, but I don't believe that's exactly where. I think that that's one of those rumors that's not exactly that people say she was, but I think she was actually somewhere else. But it definitely was a place where a lot of Hollywood people did go and did enjoy, and apparently they had really great food, so it would have been really cool to actually have visited there.
Yes, now your character, Cliff Powell, that you were talking about, so he was this famous actor. Listen, I believed he was a famous actor. I was like, okay, did I miss somebody? Was I, I'm looking up his name. I'm like, is she using him? And is this really going to be it? I was like going all over with this. I loved it. So he does become a fighter pilot. That's me and where I think, okay. So he does become a fighter pilot, and we obviously don't want to give the story away. We want people to be able to read it. But I love all the movie stars and the dancing and all of those kind of things that you put in it. I am a movie and music crazy person, so I love any kind of movie other than some of the crazy ones, I should say. But anything, and I love black and white, and and I love all kinds of music as well. So I felt like throughout this entire book, I was going through all of living in that period again, and so much enjoying it. So, and my family actually knew Perry Como, and so I never got to meet him, but I loved his music as well. And Frank Sinatra, they knew Frank Sinatra as well, and I just wanted to meet them so much and I was really small. There was just no way I was going to meet them, but I was having fun anyway. So what do you think? So you did a lot of research on this book. Is this movies and music something that you really enjoy? Like I was saying, like it's really me and that's a lot of my life? Or was it new?
Oh, absolutely. No, I've always loved old black and white films, and then that is the 40s, and swing music is really honestly one of my favorite genres of music to listen to. And one of the things I enjoyed putting in my novella, and why I chose to set my novella at a Veterans Hospital in Palm Springs, was because Bob Hope actually appeared at the hospital and did a tour there and did a show there for the recovering soldiers. And so I was able to actually listen to that exact broadcast of him doing that, and then that features into my story. So that was so fun, because I've listened to lots of Bob Hope shows and just loved including, I love what Bob Hope did for, you know, American morale during that time. I think that his humor was just such a much needed boost of inspiration to those courageous men and women who are, you know, fighting and who are going through all that. So including him in the story was so fun.
Yeah, I so agree. That was going to be my next thing, all about Bob Hope, because I'm a big Bob Hope fan as well, and I so appreciate all that he did. One of my uncles was actually overseas when he performed with a group, and they were just incredibly blessed to have him come and to sing and perform. And I know just from his perspective how much they really appreciated it. So anything else you want to tell us about your book?
I really had a fun time writing it, blending all of these different things, from a film star who becomes a fighter pilot to a veterans nurse. So it was just a really, really enjoyable collection to be in. And I just loved working with these other fabulous ladies and just really enjoyed it.
Rita, I have a question for you. Were you the one who talked about Glenn Miller in your story? Because I know that the ending of his life was not something that I had remembered until I read it.
I mentioned him. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I had to go back and look at that. I guess he died in an airplane crash during the war.
Yeah, his band, from what I remember, his band was already in France. He was in England, and he was flying across the English Channel and was lost over the English Channel. So he was a casualty of the war, yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh, he was great. His music was awesome.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, really was wonderful. The music of that era was wonderful.
Totally and completely. I'm in love with it still. I still listen to it. And I wasn't even born then. I was born in 1950. So I just go back to it all the time. Lauralee, why don't you tell us a little bit about how people can connect with you?
Sure. Well, thank you again for having me, Joe, and say hi again to all the wonderful readers out there. So I have a website, lauraleebliss.com. And also you can find me on Facebook under Readers of Lauralee Bliss, but my books are available on Amazon and christianbook.com. And love to have you stop by and say hello and enjoy a good book, because I'll tell you, it's just great to lose yourself in a good story these days. So
Sure is. I'm definitely going to get connected with you. I will do that tomorrow. Let's see. Yes, it was great having you with us, and I really did enjoy the story. Rita, let's go to you. How can people connect with you?
Well, I'm on Facebook. I'm all over Facebook.
You do.
And I do have a website. I have a website, Rita Gerlach at WordPress.com. And let's see what else. Yeah, they can connect with me through that. And I'd love it, because I just released a new novel. And what I did is I have a specific Facebook page for that, because it is the 400th anniversary of the sailing of the Mayflower this November. And I set up a page specifically for that. Having a lot of fun, putting a lot of historical information about the separatists and everything that they went through. So yeah, they can contact me there, or they can email me too.
Okay.
At rpkg@comcast.net.
.net. Okay.
I love it. I love hearing from everybody, and I write back. I always write back.
I love that. I really do. Well, I will be connecting with you as well. Johnnie, what
Oh,
about you? I
thank
know I have all your information, but they need your information.
Well, I too have a website. It's johnnie-alexander.com. But usually if you put just my name, I think it pops up pretty quick, Johnnie Alexander. I have a newsletter I put out every month where I do a book giveaway and also what I call a Let's Chat giveaway, which could be a gift card or anything else kind of fun. So I love being able to do that, to share a little bit of my life and some other books and things. And I'm on Facebook too, mostly. I've got a presence on a lot of the different social media platforms, but Facebook is where I really hang out. So thanks, Johnnie Alexander, author, but you can just find me. Just Google. I'm there.
Okay, for sure. Thank you. And Amanda.
My website is amandabarrett.net, and I'm on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
All right, well, we will find you on all those. And I am Joe Massaro with Joe Massaro Ministries, but my hat tonight is actually Yahweh Sisterhood Book Club, and you can find us on Facebook. It's Yahweh Sisterhood Book Club, FW for Fort Wayne. We do, normally, we meet each month and not only read a book and meet the author. That is how we met Johnnie. But due to COVID, we have not been meeting, and I've just been continuing to do a whole bunch of interviews since then. So this is actually the very first one that I've done when it's a normal night. I'm just minus the audience tonight. So it feels really good to actually be back in this kind of schedule and have all of you with us. And so that's kind of what I do. And so it's joemassaroministries.com. It is a new website that I'm still working on, but you can go there and get some information. Ladies, my deepest, deepest thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
I just
you.
so enjoyed listening to each of you and learning so much about history and story writing and your love of research and all that you've done. So I'm excited. I know everybody else will be as well. Let me just see.